Check, 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 check. Here's your tape. All right, thank you. Oh, I'm still on.
Good morning, First Unitarians. My name is Ed Derringer. I'm your president of your board of trustees. I just have a quick announcement, and then Randall will come up with the welcome. Remember that today, after services, we'll have a discussion session on the motion that will be coming up for 2 services next Sunday. And then next Sunday, the 19th, we will have our congregational meeting. So if you're a member, it's important that you attend and that you participate so we have a quorum and we can actually vote on it. And then I think that's about it. So that'll be right after the services next Sunday. Randall?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It's great to see you all. If you don't mind, if it's possible, move to the front of the place so that we have room for the people in the back. And if you could do that now, if that's possible, thank you. I see that. Anyway, still welcome. My name's Randall Loeb. I'm a part of the Property Management Committee and the custodian of this illustrious place. You get 2 doses at the same time. Whoever you are, whomever you love, I was supposed to put this on, pardon me. Whether you carry joy or sorrow in your heart, you're welcome here. All people of goodwill are warmly invited to join us on this great journey of the mind, heart, and spirit. If this is your first time here, please allow the basket for our collection to pass you by. Your presence is gift enough. In fact, all of your presence is gift enough anytime. We hope that you join us for coffee. I made it, so you're welcome to drink as much as you want. That won't be the case soon, though. And conversation in the community room after the service. We'd love to have you know the answers, have you get to know you and answer any questions you may have. You also can visit the information table and also the opportunities table at the very back. And if you are looking for ways to engage in our community and support our work, our Property Management Committee and all the rest of them really need your support. We are a volunteer-based organization, even though the pastor is back there and is not, and I am not either anymore. We still rely upon your volunteerism. And now I'm supposed to talk about the Property Management Committee, and as Becky said to me, that is quite a task in 3 minutes. We have a huge building. We have large spaces around it. We're the ones that take care of the infrastructure for this place and make sure that it is up and running and all of its systems are producing all year long through winter, summer, spring, and fall. And we are delighted to be able to do that. I specifically love doing the gardening and the outdoor work, and I've been doing it including this north side for years. And it's wonderful to have that kind of presence because you know that your thumbprint will always be there. So if you're interested in work, as I am, then there's lots of it for you to do. We meet once a month, but that's not really the whole thing. Carol is always walking around dealing with everything, and so am I. So thank you. Please turn off any electronic devices. And at this time, please take the time to greet the people near you by.
Good morning, First Unitarian. So glad you are here today. I'm here to share that Capitol Hill Concerts begins in just a few weeks. Our opener is the Annie Booth Trio performing from the Beatles songbook. It's going to be great. Tickets will be on sale out there after the service, or you can go to capitolhillconcerts.com and read about our 4 artists for the year and get tickets there. Thank you.
Good morning. Would you please join us in singing our song of welcome? We are many, we are one. The light of the world is within you. Sacred and worthy is your soul. A place has been made for you. Welcome.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Hope Van Guten. I use they and she pronouns. They're interchangeable, but I'll judge you if you only pick she the whole time. I'm a new member here at First Unitarian and longtime lurker. And today's reading, called Worship, is a responsive reading. It's from the poem Bless This Land by Joy Harjo, a citizen of the Muskogee Nation and the first Indigenous American to serve as the United States Poet Laureate. Bless this land, from the top of its head to the bottom of its feet. From the Arctic pole like head to the ground feet of tropical rain. Bless the eyes of this land, for they witness cruelty and kindness in this land. Bless the ears of this land, for they hear cries of heartbreak and shouts of celebration in this land. Once we heard no one shout on these lands, the trees and stones can be heard singing. Bless the mouth, lips, and speech of this land, for the land is a speaker, a singer, a keeper of all that happens here on this land. Oceans and rock cliffs sold for the trash flood of gold, uranium, or oil bust rush. Yet there are new stories to be made, little ones coming up over the horizon. Bless the arms and hands of this land, for they remake and restore beauty in this land. We are held in a circle around these lands by song, and reminded by the knowers that not one is over the other. No human above the bird, no bird above the insect, no wind above the grass. Bless the heart of this land, on its knees, planting food beneath the eternal circle of breathing, swimming, and walking in this land. The heart is a poetry maker. There is one heart, said the poetry maker. One body, and all poems make one poem. And we do not use words to make war in this land. Welcome.
So we have swapped the prelude music and the offertory music. The slide is correct, the printed order of service is not. The prelude is by Nako Bear, goes by Nako. He's a 6th generation Apache musician and activist. And after I read the responsive reading that Michael chose, I felt like this was the song to follow that. It's such poetry and uses all these earth metaphors. So enjoy.
and that chaos all around. I'll be the home you return to. I can be your middle ground. I will serve as a reminder. If you jump, you will not fall. Go on and spread those wings of reason. We are water after all. And if you call on me, I'll come running like a coyote. 'Cause we're pillars indeed. A lighthouse when you're out to sea. Beacon when direction's all I need. A compass if you know what I mean. Drunk on that nectar of all that you are to me. And you can trust me and my instincts, 'cause they are like that of a bird. I am loyal, I will feed you and sing you songs you never heard. Who wants to wear that hat this morning? I reckon neither of you cares. 'Cause there is more to life than leading, and I would follow you, I swear. If you call on me, I'll come running like a coyote. 'Cause we're pillars indeed. A lighthouse when you're out to sea. A beacon when direction's all I need. A compass if you know what I mean. Drunk on that nectar of all that you are to me. And I will always share my fire. A proper way to pay respects. Lay tobacco down in gratitude. One thing I cannot neglect. And there are eyes that watch us closely. And there are stories they will tell. There's war between fact and fiction, and we have no time to dispel. So familiar yet so foreign. Polaroids say so much. Bring me ceremony and parallels. I'll bring you cavalier and sagebrush. And if you call on me, I'll come running like a coyote. 'Cause we're pillars indeed. A lighthouse when you're out to sea. A beacon when direction's all I need. A compass if you know what I mean. Drunk on that nectar of all that you are to me. And love your feet for how they found me, and how they walked upon four winds. Be my deer, I'll be your meadow. Come graze upon bare skin.
Okay, I think it's me. All right, here we go. Okay, where are my friends? Come on down. We have Mari, we have Addie, we have Josie, all the E's, and Maggie, another E. All right, my friends. Thanks for coming down. It's okay, I get shy too. So friends, tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day. Do you know who Indigenous people are? Indigenous people are the first people who lived in a place. Their families and communities lived there for a very long time before any other groups moved in. And they have special traditions and languages and ways of life that are connected to the land. So here in the United States, we have Native Americans. They are indigenous to our country. So I'm going to share a book with you, just parts of it, called I Am Connected, and it's written and illustrated by some indigenous women. I Am Connected. So here's a girl walking on a shore. I don't know if it's a lake or an ocean. It says, I am connected. I am connected to the earth. I stand barefoot on the ground and feel energy moving into my feet and body. I inhale deeply and smell the cedar, honeysuckle, spruce, and hemlock. I feel the thick moss beneath my feet and notice the beautiful big ferns growing beside the huckleberry bush. I am thankful. What are you thankful for? Can you think of one thing you're thankful for? Can you think of something? No? I'm thankful for this church, doing amazing things for Indigenous Peoples Day. I am connected to water. I grew up on the ocean as my dad is a fisherman. I need to be near the ocean every day so I can walk to the beach and wade in. Look what she's making. Can you see what it is? Yeah, it says, sometimes I spend a long time building sand castles on the water and watch the ocean wash it all away. It's okay. I can build another one tomorrow. What do you like to build? Anybody like to build anything? Maybe with Legos? I know Mari's really good with Legos. Josie's building something right now. Yeah. I am connected to the trees. For as long as I can remember, I learned to climb trees. I climb to the top of my favorite tree and look at the world from there. I am strong. What do you do to make you feel strong? I've got a quiet group today. This is happening more and more. All right, the ancestors, Mother Earth, the trees and animals, all the people, you and me, we are all connected. And so today, Michael's message to the adults in our church are going to be all about how we are all connected. And that brings us to our shared UU value of interdependence. We honor the independent web of all existence and acknowledge our place in it. So it ties beautifully with things that we learn in our UU tradition. All right, my friends, are we ready to get sung back to our classes? Let's do it. All right, ready to walk under the tunnel? All right, Mari's going to lead the way. Come on, Mari.
Would you please rise in body and or spirit and join us?
This land is your land, this land is my land, from California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land
California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. There was a big high wall there that tried to stop me. The sign was painted, said private property, but on the backside it didn't say nothing. That land was made for you and me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. One bright sunny morning, in the shadow of the steeple, near the relief office, I see my people. As I stood there hungry, I stood there wondering if God was America for me. This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the redwood forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me.
Thank you very, very much. I'm Russ Patterson, and I'm a relatively new member of this congregation, though I've been a Unitarian for almost half my life. I joined this congregation for several reasons. First, got some really good music, got some really good preaching, and some really good people, and I just wanted to be part of a Denver family. And shortly after I joined, I was asked to join the property management committee, and I said yes. You get the idea for today, huh? Well, every community is built on the generosity of its people through the time we share, the kindness we extend, the resources we contribute. Giving is an act of trust and hope, a way of saying that we believe in what we do together and the impact we can have. Your support helps sustain this place and the connections that bring meaning to our shared experience. You may give today or in other ways throughout the year. Know that every contribution will make a difference. We invite you to give as you're able, knowing that together we create something greater than many of us can do alone. Thank you.
Out where the river broke, the bloodwood and the desert oak, holding wrecks and boiling diesel, steaming 45 degrees. The time has come to say fast fare, to pay the rent, to pay our share. The time has come, a fact's a fact. It belongs to them. Let time has come to say fair's fair, to pay the rent now, to pay our share. For we'll scare the cockatoos from Kintor East to Yuendamu. The western desert lives and breathes in 45 degrees. The time has come to say fair's fair, to pay the rent, to pay our share. The time has come, a fact's a fact, it belongs to them, let's give it back. How can we dance when our earth is turning? How do we sleep when our beds are burning? How can we dance when our earth is turning? How can we sleep when our beds are burning? The time has come to say fair's fair, to pay the rent now, to pay our share. The time has come, a fact's a fact, it belongs to them, we're gonna give it back. How can we dance when our earth is turning? How can we sleep when our beds are burning?
Thank you. Your contributions freely given today are gratefully received. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your support, your ongoing support of the larger ministry of our congregation. Thank you. I want to take just a moment and just recognize we have a wonderful professional staff here and a ministerial resident. But you know, it takes about 40 people to make a Sunday morning happen, between passing out the orders of service and greeting people at the door and staffing tables afterwards and volunteers spending their talents singing up there. Could I just, people in our sound booth, people who set up this every morning, I just want to, could we just have a round of applause for all the folks who make this happen? That song, I always, the phrase in that song they sang that always catches my attention for some reason is that phrase, a fact is a fact. I want to just begin this morning by noting a couple facts. I want to note this week that to a degree I have personally never seen before, an entire branch of the federal government completely abdicated, effectively renounced its own role, its own power, its own responsibility in the constitutional separation of powers. When Pam Bondi last week
made a public mockery of congressional oversight with the full cooperation, even the praise of Republican senators. It made a statement that I only hope the American people really understand what we saw. Amen. Also this morning, we have to hold up this very fragile agreement in Israel and Gaza that took effect at midnight. So very long overdue. And complicated, at least in my mind, in that not one single player in that current agreement can be trusted for even a second. I don't think that's funny. Really, I'm sorry. Not Israel, not Hamas, not the United States, no one. As always, we pray for sanity, for mercy. We pray for the people, for wisdom on the part of those making decisions. May the hostages be released. May the Israeli government hold up their end. May the bombs and the drones and the bullets stop. May the people be fed and cared for. So by way of a prayer this morning, and I was thinking about what Michael was going to preach about, and I want to read you a poem by one of what I consider a great American treasure, Wendell Berry, the author and activist. He wrote this, he called it The Mad Farmers' Liberation Front. Love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacations with pay, want more of everything ready-made, be afraid to know your neighbors and to die, and you will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer, and when they want you to buy something, they will call you, and when they want you to die for a profit, they will let you know. So, friends, every day do something that won't compute. Love the Lord, love the world, work for nothing, take all that you have and be poor, love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. Hope to live in that free republic for which it stands. Ask the questions that have no answers. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they have rotted into the mold. Call that prophet. Prophecy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Listen to carrion. Put your ear close, hear the faint chattering of the songs that are to come. Expect the end of the world and laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful even though you have considered all the facts. Ask yourself, will this disturb the sleep of a woman near to giving birth? Go with your love to the fields. Lie down in the shade. Rest your head in her lap. Swear allegiance to what is nighest in your thoughts. As soon as the generals and politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some of them in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection.
Well, good morning, First Unitarian. So I am Michael DeSantis. I'm your ministerial resident for this year. As a reminder, I use they, them pronouns, which I know we are working on. And I want to take a point of ministerial privilege this morning to name, as one of you told me when I walked in today, that there are some people here today who look a whole lot like me because my family is actually in the house today. In particular, I will name that my twin, Tony, is here. Tony uses they and she pronouns, and if you have comments on the sermon, make sure that you're coming to me and spare them, please, okay? So, as Leslie told us in our Time for All Ages, and as some of you likely already knew, tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day. Indigenous Peoples Day, it's a holiday that began in the 1970s and in many ways still serves as a counter-celebration, a protest of sorts against Columbus Day, a day which honors, as many Indigenous Americans pointed out both then and continue to point out now, a man who contributed greatly to the pillaging of the Americas and the genocide of its Indigenous peoples. And so, if it wasn't abundantly clear already, I have been accused of many things in life, but subtlety is usually not one of them. I want us to spend some time today reflecting on what invitations this holiday might have for us. For us as a Unitarian, Universalist religious community which cares about justice and which is at the same time largely, if not exclusively, made up of people, very much including myself, who are not indigenous to this land. And I want to engage in this reflection through the lens of liberation. Liberation. Here's the thing. Colonialism, it sometimes operates in incredibly obvious ways, but sometimes its workings are more subtle. And so I want us to look honestly at those workings because we can't even begin to imagine what it means to be liberated if we can't recognize or be honest about what it is that we're trying to liberate ourselves from. There will be little here that you don't already know, but there will also be many truths that most of us tend to overlook in our day-to-day lives because it helps us to get through the day, to go about our lives without becoming overwhelmed by guilt or questions so big. that none of us have the answers to alone. So, let's begin. Throughout today's service, you might have noticed that there's this refrain that keeps popping up. By my count, it has appeared at least 30 times already. This land. There's that subtlety, folks. Bless this land, we heard in the words of the Muskogee poet Joy Harjo. This land is your land, this land is my land, we heard in Woody Guthrie's famous and so often misunderstood song. This land. This land that we are on now, on which both the city of Denver and our congregation sits, it's the ancestral homelands of the Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne peoples. When white settlers began moving westward, much of this land of what is now the state of Colorado, it was originally promised to, or quote unquote, given to those peoples by the U.S. government. Yes, they were given their own land. How generous. And then in this land, in 1858, in what is now Englewood, a group led by a white prospector discovered gold. And suddenly, white people's relationship to the land changed immensely. By 1861, the U.S. government had seized a huge swath of land that included all of Denver. And in just a few short years, white Americans and their governments had forced all of Colorado's indigenous peoples off of their lands and onto reservations, as white settlers began pouring in and building Western-style homes and mills and churches which included the first building of this congregation in 1873. And while founded in 1871, building built in 1873. So while there is a particularity to this history, with all those particular dates, there's a particularity to this story here on this land and its particular peoples, but this overall pattern, it's one that settler colonizers repeated, as you all no doubt know, across this land of the United States, the land that Woody Guthrie wrote about. But I think it's telling that even Guthrie, the great leftist singer-songwriter, even Guthrie in that song, even he seems to erase the experience of indigenous Americans and their particular relationship with this land. The erasure of indigenous Americans and indigenous issues, it of course has a long, long history in our country. Indeed, that history, it is so long that the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he once wrote the following in 1964, over 60 years ago. Our nation was born in genocide when it embraced the doctrine that the original American, the Indian king wrote, was an inferior race. We are perhaps the only nation which tried as a matter of national policy to wipe out its indigenous population. Moreover, he went on to write, we elevated that tragic experience into a noble crusade. Indeed, even today we have not permitted ourselves to reject or feel remorse for this shameful episode. If anything, though, I think that King might have undersold the problem. The United States was, of course, not the only nation founded by European colonizers operating under the logic of settler colonialism, a program which seeks to displace the indigenous peoples of a land, as well as their cultures, and to replace them with those of the settlers, to replace them with the people of that settling society and its culture. This same paradigm, it's often used to explain the state of Israel and the control that it exerts over Palestinians, not to mention its genocidal campaign in Gaza. And the settler colonial project, it played out and still plays out similarly in places like South Africa and Canada, New Zealand, Australia. It's Australia, for example, that gave us that song that we heard earlier, Beds Are Burning, a song that was written by white allies of that country's indigenous land rights movement. Where I do think that MLK was absolutely spot on, though, was in his assessment of how the logic of colonialism tries to work. When he said, for example, that in the US we embraced the doctrine that Native Americans were an inferior race, he was highlighting something that is core to the attempts to justify colonialism, and that is a process of othering. Othering. We tend to think of othering as something that we humans do to our fellow humans. But colonialism relies first actually on othering humans from the land on which we live and work and love. It relies on first making settlers and then those who follow them in the dominant culture feel as though they are other than or separate from or even apart from and above the land. This allows colonial projects to treat the land as something to be possessed and ripped asunder for those materials that the colonizers deem valuable: gold and silver and wood and water and oil and coal. But this way of understanding the land and the relationship that we humans have to it, it is, of course, foreign to indigenous communities. The indigenous environmental activist Max Liberand, a member of the Red River Métis First Nation in Canada, for example, defines land as, quote, "an unique entity that is the combined spirit of plants, air, animals, water, humans, histories, and events recognized by many indigenous communities." And when they write about the word land, they capitalize the word land. They capitalize it to signify, not indigenous communities, this is the environmental scientists, they capitalize it to indicate that the land is more than a mere landscape, that it is more than something inert or something that can be understood as private property. And Joy Harjo, the Muskogee poet, concludes that poem, "Bless This Land," that we read as our call to worship, with the following words: "These lands aren't our lands. These lands aren't your lands. We are this land. We are this land." To me, those lines have always read like a repudiation not only of the colonial mindset, but a pointed response to Woody Guthrie's song. A pointed response to that call that this land is your land. These lands aren't our lands. These lands aren't your lands. Now, of course, colonialism, it doesn't just rely on separating people from land. It also relies on othering people from other people. In order for colonialism to take place, it has to create some kind of us versus them mentality. This is done through culture, but it's also done through things like fences and walls and reservations. Colonialism depends on creating some sort of notion that there is one group, an imagined our group, us, that is made up of people who are worthy of respect and dignity, whose way of life is deserving of being honored, and another group, some imagine them, who is not worthy of those things. As liberals, we often think about this us versus them logic as something that we are above, as something that we are better than and have outgrown, that colonialism was something that less enlightened groups did long ago, which ironically is its own form of us versus them thinking. But here's the thing. Treating colonialism as something that other people have done out there, it obscures that political liberalism was used to justify European colonization. And it also ignores the fact that religious liberals, including those right here in the United States, they participated in colonial projects. In 1870, for example, a group of 4 Unitarian ministers volunteered to go to the reservations of one of Denver's indigenous populations, the Utes. They went there to, quote unquote, civilize them. One account of their work from a Unitarian publication at the time proudly proclaimed that the 4 ministers were there to present to them, and note the them used to refer to the Utes. They were there to present to them the better phases of a Christian civilization. Similar sentiments were shared by the Reverend Samuel Eliot. Reverend Eliot served for several years in the 1890s right here at the congregation that would become First Unitarian. You can see his photo in our wall of former ministers in the hallway down to the basement if you'd like. Eliot later went on to become the president of the American Unitarian Association, the national denomination in that time, and a precursor to today's UUA, which Eliot was instrumental in creating. And while he was serving as president, he was invited to join the U.S. Board of Indian Commissioners, a group responsible for advising the government on Native American policy and for ensuring that it fulfilled its treaty obligations. In that capacity, Eliot traveled the country. He promoted the work of the board, and he regularly gave a stump speech, sometimes delivered as a sermon, which celebrated what he viewed as the way that Indigenous Americans were being uplifted through assimilation into white Western culture. And that stump speech, it bore the almost absurdly racist title, From Scalping Knife to Can Opener. Right? Not great. And trust me when I tell you, the rest of the speech is not a much easier read. The thing is, so many of these colonial projects were justified by saying that they were meant to help Indigenous peoples. That's certainly what Sam Eliot thought he was doing. It comes through in his words. And that's part of why in the 1970s, also in Australia, Indigenous rights activists coined the now famous slogan, "If you have come here to help me, then you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, let us work together." Liberation. Liberation. Look, I promised liberation, and we will get to that. I know that the beginning has not been the most uplifting. I want to give us a glimpse of what it might look like to build a collective liberation that centers Indigenous people, and how we might possibly be able to do some of that work right here at First Unitarian. When it comes to that liberation, we have to start, obviously, as MLK realized more than 60 years ago, with collectively as both a nation and a community, permitting ourselves to reject or feel remorse for this shameful episode of our history. But we can't just stop there. Because if we want to live into the work of justice and liberation, we can't just stop with acknowledging past wrongs. Now here I'm drawing on the perspective of Indigenous leaders and activists who themselves have mixed feelings about such acknowledgements, about such things like land acknowledgements in particular. While Indigenous folks are certainly not a monolith, a common sentiment among Indigenous folks about land acknowledgements is that they can be a good starting point for committing to honor Indigenous rights, but they can't be the end point. Otherwise, they're just performative. They're just something that us well-intentioned folks do to make ourselves feel better. And the work of liberation, the real work of liberation, it's not work that can be done performatively. It's work that has to be done with our whole and our collective heart and soul. So to do the work of liberation, we have to reject not only shameful episodes in our past, but also work to reject systems that allow injustice to continue. And we have to do that not just through words, but we have to do them through actions, as the eighth principle reminds us, by dismantling those systems of oppression in both ourselves and in our institutions. This means that for us, part of the work of liberation, it has to be recognizing whenever we're drifting into things like othering and the us versus them mentality, and the kind of hubris that led our religious ancestors to assume that they knew how to help Indigenous communities without ever asking the Indigenous communities themselves. And it requires us, liberation, it requires us to reflect on what ways do we, for example, believe ourselves to be apart from or above other communities, especially other religious communities, communities both within and beyond our own UU faith. And what is the responsibility? What is the responsibility of this congregation where Samuel Eliot pastored when he first developed his misguided interest in trying to help Indigenous communities? What is our responsibility for making amends for that work and that interest that was sparked right here, and which became his life work in a public and influential platform that he used to spread bigoted and harmful ideas? I am not the one with the answers to all these questions. But collective liberation requires us to begin asking them and seeking answers. Liberation requires us to listen to the answers of everyone who is also working to be free. And for those of us who have power, and I'm especially talking here to my fellow white folks, this means that we need to be willing to listen to the stories of Indigenous peoples and the demands of their communities, even and especially when those stories and those demands might scare us. The demands of the land back movement, for example, demands which often include paying the rent and giving land back to its Indigenous peoples, they're often a non-starter for settler communities. But when we consider that understanding of land that Indigenous communities have, it's hard to imagine a way that true amends and reparations could take place without some willingness by those who now occupy this land to at least consider ceding back some of this land. That is the very least. And while we're talking about land, how do we liberate ourselves from the colonial mindset with regards to land? That mindset which treats the land as something to be owned or used for personal or financial benefit. And how do we do all of that without just appropriating the traditions of the Indigenous peoples that have used, the traditions that Indigenous peoples have used to honor and tend to this land since time immemorial? Because such appropriation is just an additional act of theft, an additional breach of right relationship. In short, as we strive towards collective liberation for all peoples and beings, we can't downplay the very real differences and diversity that exist. Differences and diversity which greatly affect how different communities and peoples, what different communities and peoples need in order to be free. So, while I do not have all of the answers, what I do know deep in my body and at the very core of my being, as I'm sure do many of you, what I do know is this: achieving collective liberation will require finding new and better ways of relating to one another. Liberation will require finding new and better ways of relating to the world of which we are a part. And liberation will require new and better ways of relating to past wrongs, both our own and those of our ancestors. All of this obviously needs to begin with deep personal work. Ultimately, though, it has to result in and lead to us reaching out to one another and to this land as we seek to repair relationships that we've damaged and transform the problematic relationships that we currently have. In a moment, we're going to sing together one of our hymns which speaks about this kind of reaching out. And my invitation to all of us as we sing that hymn is to reflect on if we are in fact the ones reaching out. And what other communities, what land, what difficult truths and moral imperatives, what might be reaching back out to us? And are we ready and open to receive it? May this be so. May this be so, and amen.
Would you please rise in body and or spirit and join us in singing Now I Walk in Beauty. Building Bridges. This is number 1023 in your Till hymnal if you'd like to follow along.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me with all of our voices and all of our visions? Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me with all of our voices and all of our visions? Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to bridges. Will you reach out to divisions? When building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me with all of our voices and all of our visions? Friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me with all of our voices and all of our visions? Friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Would you please join us in singing our closing affirmation?
Behind all our differences and beneath our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together throughout all time, through life and death, and the space between the stars, throughout all time, through life and death, and the space between the stars.
The botanist and writer Robin Wall Kimmerer, a member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation, writes, "Maybe the task is to strive to become naturalized to place." A note, she distinguishes between being naturalized to a place and being indigenous to that place. And she invites those who are not indigenous. She says this: being naturalized to a place means to live as if this land is the land that feeds you, as if these are the streams from which you drink, that build your body and fill your spirit. To become naturalized is to know that your ancestors lie in this ground. Here you will give your gifts and meet your responsibilities. To become naturalized is to live as if your children's future matters, to take care of the land as if our lives and the lives of all our relatives depend on it, because they do. Good people, may we build bridges and give our gifts and meet our responsibilities on this land as we work towards collective liberation. Go in peace, practice love. Amen.